All right, so the Oilers are in a 1-0 hole with the Kings. True, there's still a lot of hockey to be played, but something needs to change before tonight's game 2 in LA, or the hole could be too deep to climb out of. To talk about that, here's my buddy Ryan Rishaug. Ryan, I think we may have some disagreements here. So there are some things that I'm seeing and I'm having a hard time understanding, so I need your help with this, okay? Number one, what the heck is Knoblauch doing with McDavid and Draisaitl? When at times he keeps them apart, the Oilers can't score. He puts them together, they score. They go nuts. 2 goals, 6 points between them in the last 21 minutes of game 1. Schauger, why not just put these two guys together and keep them together?
Okay, so I agree with you. I said on our post-game hits right after the game the other night, I think they need to start together next game. So on this one, Gino, we do not have disagreement, but I will take the position of counterpoint just because it is a debate out there, and I think it's a fair one. Here is the debate. If you start McDavid and Draisaitl on separate lines, right, and the game goes well, and you don't need to make the switch, I think we would all agree that them on separate lines is the formula to win a Stanley Cup. When you get deeper into the playoffs against better teams, you got to split those guys up, right? You got to have more than a one-line attack. So if we can all agree that that's the formula to win a cup eventually, you want to be in that formation as much as possible. So if you start a game with them on separate lines, the winning formation, and it goes well, awesome. That's perfect. That's what you want. If it doesn't go well, you can break the glass and push the button. And now they're together, and you've got your nuclear option. It generally goes well, which we saw against the Kings. Here's the counterpoint. If you start them together, Gino, and it doesn't go well, now what? What? There's no glass to break. You're going to separate them and expect better results? That's the counterpoint. But I agree with you. They got to break the glass and start with them together. Push the button and start with them together.
I agree that I don't understand this because here's the bottom line is I know what you're saying. If you're going to win the cup, ultimately you got to have more offensive balance. I get that. But if you don't get it done now, you're not going to have a chance in the next round. You're not going to have a chance in a week. So it doesn't matter.
My good sir, we agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
You got to do what's going to give you the best opportunity to score now. If not, you're toasted. And, oh, yeah, but you know what? We would have had balance had we gone further. Well, big deal. Big deal.
Yeah, now the one thing, Gino, you and I need to remember this. Sorry to interrupt you. You and I need to remember this. Go ahead. If they start the game together tonight and the Oilers have no goals through 40 minutes and they're not really clicking, because they don't always. I'm telling you, Gino, there have been lots of games where those two have played together and it just isn't working for whatever reason. They haven't harnessed the magic. And if that's the case and nothing's clicking, remember that feeling while you're watching the game. Well, what are they going to do now? And that is what they have to guard against sometimes. So just to be fair, let's remember that side of the argument.
I get that, but if they can't score together, then you're not going to win this series anyway, so it's a moot point. Let's get to goaltending, and I'm pretty sure you and I disagree on this one. Stuart Skinner really struggled badly in the opener. That's Captain Obvious. He gave up a goal in the first shot of the series. He gave up 4 in the first 39 minutes of the game, but Knoblauch didn't want to commit now to making a change for game number 2 too early. Looking at the numbers down the stretch, Calvin Pickard actually had a better goals against and save percentage than Skinner, Schauger over the last 3 months of the season. So why not make that change?
Yeah, very fair. All very fair points. I think there's a segment of the fan base that is sitting here saying, yes, Gino, get him. Yes, you're right. Tell him. There's a lot of people that feel that way, for sure. And when you look at those numbers, that's fair. What I would say is that Stuart Skinner has shown that he can take a team to Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final. He's not the perfect goaltender. Let's all remember how much he makes and how old he is in his experience level and the fact that he wasn't even supposed to be the starter. He should still be, tutoring under Jack Campbell to become the starter. So he's ahead of where he was supposed to be in his career. So let's remember that. But he took this team to Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final. The organizational belief is over the long term of a playoff grind, he's got the better potential to get you there. Calvin Pickard, further along in his career, hasn't done that before. And it's a lot different coming off the bench and being the savior as he was in the Vancouver series last year than being the guy with all the pressure for days and days before the game, days and days between series. It's different. Calvin Pickard is an exceptionally good backup. They believe Stuart Skinner is their starter, and you have to treat your starter different than you would treat your backup. And I believe there's a distinction there for this team. It's too early, Gino, to pull the rug out from under the guy you believe is your starter. If the Oilers play a good game and Stuart Skinner doesn't, and it costs them, all that history you talked about will matter, but it is too soon to pull the rug out from under your starter, and they believe Skinner is their starter, whether you agree or not.
I would say this. Forget the fact too soon to make that move. If Skinner comes out and lays another stinker like he did in game number 1, then it's too late. Now you're in a huge hole. Now you know that Calvin Pickard's your only option. That puts way more pressure on Pickard. Like if Skinner goes up and gives up another 6 spot, now Pickard goes to the net and goes, everything depends on me. That puts way more pressure on him and way more pressure on the team. And then I think it's too late, Shocker.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What happens if Pickard goes in and doesn't play great? Because he's your backup, right? He's your backup. He's not necessarily your starter.
Yep.
And you've never expected him to be your starter. And you put him in this position. What if he goes in and it doesn't go great? Now you've yanked your starter, which we're all human beings. You got to think that'll have an effect on Stuart Skinner. Where do you go from there? So I think there will be a shorter leash. I think if it's 3-0 in the second period and you haven't loved a goal or two on Skinner, for sure, the leash is shorter because Pickard's performance was what it was, Gino. But what do you do if Pickard doesn't get it done either? Now you got to beat down Skinner, a guy who everyone thought that'll be, just make the change, that'll be the answer. Now what are you doing? And you have to guard against putting yourself into those positions, Gino.
Here's what I would suggest. I think you don't have to beat down Skinner. What you have then is Skinner. Pickard comes out and loses the game, and now you put Skinner back in for game 3. Then Skinner goes, I'm going to show you guys screwed up by pulling me for game 2. I'm going to show you that I can indeed get that job. And then I think you get a revitalized Skinner, and you get a revitalized team playing in front of him saying, let's get our game back together and protect this guy a little bit more. That's what I think.
Yeah,
all right,
I think.
Let's get to Evander Kane.
No, I think that's a great point,
ahead.
Gino. That's a great point. And the last thing I'll go back to is one of the things that is known about Stuart Skinner is that performance-wise, he's a pretty good bounce-back goaltender. He's shown that at times. Now, I know you looked at the Stanley Cup final and you go, well, he lost 3 in a row. But I'll point back to the LA series last year, game 2. The Oilers lost in overtime. Anze Kopitar beat him clean over the glove with a goal. I remember between those 2 games, people were kind of wondering, what do you do here with the goaltending? And they stood fast. They went back to Skinner after a game where he'd let in a bunch of goals and a couple they didn't like. And he made 27 saves, let in 1 goal. It was a huge win, helped swing the series. So if you've got a good bounce-back goaltender, you might as well give him the opportunity to bounce back.
Agreed. All right, so let's get to the third topic that I want to talk about today, and that's Evander Kane.
Okay.
Could be coming back tonight. Would be his first game back since game 2 of the Stanley Cup final last year. Here's the debate. Start him in the top 6, maybe adds a little spark to that second line. Again, gives the second line something when you put Draisaitl and McDavid together on the top line. Or do you ease him back in, drop him in the bottom 6? I say top 6, second line, put him right out there. Give the Kings something to think about. Which way would you go?
I'd be a little bit cautious because it's been over 10 months. So I agree. Like, when people think about Evander Kane, you envision this player that is just a difference maker in a bunch of different ways. You know, can bang in goals, crash the crease, be physical, you know, all those things. The problem is when you haven't played in 10 and a half months, what you might get, and it's not even his fault, is an Evander Kane who can't handle the puck on the wall in his own end. And so if Evander Kane is struggling with the timing in the hands and maybe there's some turnaways and some yips there, which would be understandable, who you want him on the ice against? Kopitar? You want him on the ice against Kempe? Or do you want him on the ice against, you know, some of the bottom 6 forwards of the LA Kings? I think you need to give him the opportunity to find his timing and earn more, as opposed to giving him too much and it doesn't work, and now you're demoting a player who's just got back into the lineup. You know, I understand the instinct. The other thing to keep in mind here, so the Oilers already have Trent Frederick. who's barely played and is struggling to find his timing and really didn't make much of an impact. Now you're going to drop and he's in the top 9, by the way. Now you're going to drop Evander Kane into the top 9, a guy who knows what you'll get from him. They'll probably pull Josh Brown out of the lineup and throw John Klingberg, who, by the way, has barely played any hockey lately, right? So how many players can you put in core positions where you're like, well, he's barely played and not sure what this is going to look like, but roll the dice and cross your fingers. The Oilers need to insulate themselves a little bit and give these guys the space to find their games.
I understand what you're saying, but dude, this is the playoffs. The time to find your game and get the space you wanted was a month ago, not right now. Because now, by the time you find your space is on the third hole in the golf course. One last thing, you had mentioned, you made a comment a couple of days ago when we were talking, and you're saying Mattias Ekholm being out of the Oilers lineup is huge. As a matter of fact, to quote you, you said the most dramatic missing person in the lineup, more so than McDavid, more so than Draisaitl, would be losing Ekholm. And obviously it's been crushing them. But my point is this, is that not a scathing indictment against your coaching staff? And I understand the depth is what it is right now. You can't add other players. When you cannot adjust, I get the fact that Ekholm is key. But if you can't adjust to having the one guy down, which every coach has had to deal with in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs, is that not a coaching problem less than it is a roster problem right now?
I mean, it's not like you can tap Ty Emberson on the shoulder and say, go be Mattias Ekholm for the next 3 shifts. I mean, you can't do that. Like, you can't
gotta adjust.
have players be... No, I agree, Gino. And your point is well made. It certainly should not be an excuse. But, you know, and to quantify my statement on Ekholm, like if you lose McDavid out of the lineup, you've still got a Draisaitl. If you lose a Draisaitl, you've still got a McDavid. When you lose Ekholm, I mean, you've got Darnell Nurse, who actually didn't play bad in game 1, but the drop-off between the next guys coming in is really significant. So it's a huge loss. I think I'm going to put the onus more on the rest of the D-men than I am the coaching staff. And here's why. I think if you're Evan Bouchard, and, you know, Evan Bouchard has shown he can do it, you know. He's shown he can be excellent defensively in the playoffs. He was last year. And Mattias Ekholm's not in the lineup. That is a night where you need to go out and make sure. You need to say, not only do I need to be an elite puck mover and run a power play and create offense tonight, I need to make triple sure in my own end because we're missing that really awesome defensive player. And Evan Bouchard didn't do that in the first game. Multiple times through the year where Ekholm hasn't been available, and you look at Bouchard and say, okay, you're the man. You've shown you can be the man. Be the man. And in his own end, he hasn't even been close to picking up the slack. So, I mean, the coaches can only throw the players over the boards, and they can only throw the ones that the general manager has given them. And I think it's incumbent on the players who have more to give to make sure they're giving all of it, Gino. And if you still lose at the end of the day and Bouchard emptied the tank at both ends, well, it was a tough loss and he didn't have Ekholm. What gets me is when there's something left in the tank from guys that have more to give, knowing today was a day to give it all. That's where it gets me.
Tonight in LA, Schauger, tonight's the night for everybody across the board in the Oilers lineup to say, I had more to give, I gave more, and on this night, it was enough. We'll see. Schauger, enjoy the game. We'll talk afterwards, brother.
Yeah, sounds good, buddy. One of us is going to wield a gigantic I told you so to club the other over the head with tomorrow, and I can't wait either way. Whichever way it goes, I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to doing exactly that, my friend.